The night Clara Whitmore's farmhouse door exploded inward. She wasn't holding a weapon. She was clutching a wooden box that could destroy an empire. Outside, Vernon Hale's armed men circled like wolves. Inside, a duke who'd abandoned high society stood between her and certain death. What started as one woman's fight to save her dead father's land had just uncovered the biggest land conspiracy the frontier had ever seen. Will you stay with me until the very end of this story? Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey travels. The rain started 3 hours before Duke Rowan Blackthorne decided he was done pretending to care about any of it. He stood at the edge of the Weatherford Estate ballroom, watching 50 of England's finest families dance and laugh and lie to each other with practiced ease. Crystal chandeliers threw cold light across silk gowns and tailored suits. Champagne flowed. Orchestras played. Everyone smiled. No one meant a damn thing they said.
Your Grace, you simply must tell us about your estates in Northumberland, Lady Catherine Pemberton cooed, her fingers brushing his sleeve with calculated casualness. I hear the grounds are absolutely breathtaking this time of year.
Rowan looked down at her. 23 years old, flawless complexion, educated in Paris, descended from 2 centuries of nobility. She'd rehearsed this conversation in a mirror somewhere. He could see it in the way her head tilted just so, the practiced warmth in her eyes that never quite reached the cold arithmetic happening behind them. She didn't want him. She wanted what he represented: title, wealth, status, power. The same thing they all wanted. The grounds are adequate, Rowan said flatly. Lady Catherine's smile flickered, just for a moment, but he caught it. That brief flash of irritation before the mask slid back into place. How wonderfully modest, she recovered smoothly. Perhaps you might show them to me someday. Perhaps. Rowan stepped away before she could finish. He'd had this exact conversation 11 times tonight. Different faces, same script. It was exhausting. He moved through the crowd like a ghost at his own funeral, nodding politely, offering nothing. Women watched him with hungry eyes. Men sized him up, calculating whether he was competition or opportunity. Every smile hid an agenda. Every compliment concealed a transaction. His mother would have hated this. The thought hit him harder than he expected. Elizabeth Blackthorne had been dead for 2 years now, but her voice still haunted him in moments like these. Find someone real, Rowan. Not someone who wants the Duke. Someone who wants the man. He'd promised her, held her hand while pneumonia stole her breath, and swore he'd find a woman worthy of the Blackthorne name. Not because of bloodlines or breeding, but because of character, strength, integrity. 2 years of searching, and he'd found nothing but variations of Lady Catherine Pemberton. Rowan pushed through the ballroom's French doors onto a stone terrace overlooking manicured gardens. The October air bit cold against his face. He welcomed it, better than the suffocating warmth of ambition and perfume inside. Running away, Your Grace? He turned. Lord Marcus Ashford leaned against the balustrade, smoking a cigar. They'd known each other since childhood, back when titles didn't matter, before inheritance and expectation turned friendship into networking. Taking air, Rowan said, looked more like escape. Marcus exhaled smoke into the darkness. Can't say I blame you. Catherine Pemberton's been circling you all night like a hawk over a rabbit. She's persistent. She's calculating. Her father's bankrupt, you know. Gambling debts, bad investments, the Pemberton estate's mortgaged to the hilt. Catherine needs a wealthy husband by spring, or they lose everything. Marcus studied him. You really didn't know? Rowan shook his head slowly. That's because you don't pay attention to gossip. Noble quality in a man. Terrible strategy in our world. Marcus flicked ash over the railing. Half the women in that ballroom are in similar positions, drowning in debt, clinging to titles that don't mean anything anymore. They don't want you, Rowan. They want your money to save their dying legacies. Then what the hell am I doing here? Excellent question. Marcus grinned without humor. What are you doing here? Your mother's been gone 2 years. You've attended every significant social event from London to Edinburgh. You've met every eligible woman in 3 countries, and you look more miserable now than you did at her funeral. Rowan gripped the cold stone balustrade. She made me promise. Find someone worthy. Build something real. And you thought you'd find that here? Among people who inherit everything and earn nothing? Marcus laughed quietly. Your mother was a romantic, God rest her, but she lived in a different world than we do. People marry for advantage now, not love. Security, not passion. That's just reality. Then reality's broken. Maybe. Or maybe you're looking in the wrong places. Before Rowan could respond, a commotion erupted inside the ballroom. Raised voices, the music stuttered to a halt. Both men turned as Lord Weatherford himself appeared on the terrace, his face flushed with wine and irritation. Blackthorn, there you are. You need to come inside immediately. Lady Pemberton's making a scene, demanding to know why you've been avoiding her daughter all evening. Rowan closed his eyes. Christ. She's suggesting you've been disrespectful, making implications about your character. It's becoming quite the spectacle. Weatherford looked genuinely distressed, not about the conflict itself, but about the social embarrassment of it happening at his party. Marcus stubbed out his cigar. Want me to handle it? No. Rowan straightened his jacket. I'll go. Apologize. Make excuses. Play the game. Or, Marcus said quietly, you could leave. Right now. Walk away from all of it. And go where? Anywhere but here. The suggestion hung in the cold air between them. For a wild moment, Rowan actually considered it. Just mount his horse and ride into the darkness, leave the whole charade behind. But that wasn't how things worked. He had responsibilities, obligations. The Blackthorn name meant something, even if he was starting to hate what it attracted. He went inside. Lady Pemberton stood in the center of the ballroom, her considerable presence commanding attention like a general addressing troops. She was a large woman, both in stature and personality, dripping with jewelry that probably cost more than most families earned in a decade. Simply unacceptable behavior from someone of his station, she was saying loudly. My Catherine is descended from the Duke of Marlborough himself, and to be treated with such casual disregard— Lady Pemberton, Rowan's voice cut through the noise. The crowd parted. He walked forward, feeling 50 pairs of eyes dissecting every movement. I apologize if my behavior seemed discourteous. It was not my intention to offend you or Lady Catherine. Not your intention? Lady Pemberton's face flushed darker. You've barely spoken 2 words to her all evening. Do you have any idea— Mother, please. Catherine appeared at her mother's elbow, mortification written across her perfect features. It's fine. His Grace doesn't owe us anything. Doesn't owe us? We're the Pembertons. Your father was bankrupt, Rowan said quietly. The ballroom went dead silent. Lady Pemberton's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Rowan hadn't meant to say it. The word just came out, propelled by 2 years of frustration and exhaustion and disappointment. He saw Catherine's face collapse, saw the shame and humiliation flood her eyes, and felt immediately, violently sick with himself. I'm sorry, he said quickly. That was cruel and unnecessary. But the damage was done. Catherine turned and fled, her mother chasing after her. The crowd erupted in whispers. Lord Weatherford looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Rowan stood there, aware he'd just committed social suicide, and found he didn't care as much as he should have. Well, Marcus said from somewhere behind him, that's one way to leave a party. Bikes. Rowan rode hard through the night, putting miles between himself and Weatherford Estate before the sun rose. He didn't know where he was going, didn't particularly care. The horse beneath him, a bay gelding named Archer, seemed content to run, and Rowan let him. By the time dawn broke gray and cold over the countryside, they were deep into territory he didn't recognize. Rolling hills gave way to rougher terrain. Farms grew smaller, more scattered. The roads turned from packed earth to rutted trails. He'd left England's polished heartland behind and entered the frontier territories, places where titles meant nothing and survival meant everything. The rain started around midday. Not the gentle English drizzle he knew, but a violent autumn storm that came down in sheets, turning the trail to mud and reducing visibility to almost nothing. Rowan pushed forward anyway, too stubborn to stop, until Archer began struggling and he realized he was risking the horse for no good reason. Through the rain, he spotted lights. A town, if you could call it that. Maybe 24 buildings clustered together where the trail widened. No sign announced its name. No welcoming committee waited. Just a scattering of wooden structures hunched against the storm, like survivors of some forgotten war. Rowan guided Archer toward what looked like a tavern or inn. Smoke rose from its chimney. Warm light glowed behind rain-streaked windows. He dismounted, tied Archer under a crude overhang, and pushed through the door. The conversation inside stopped immediately. 15 faces turned to stare at him. Working men, mostly. Rough clothes, rougher hands, eyes that calculated threat the way ballroom eyes calculated status. The air smelled of wood smoke, wet wool, and something cooking that made his stomach growl despite the tension. "Help you?" The bartender, a thick-shouldered man with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw, didn't sound particularly helpful. "Looking for a room," Rowan said. "Just for the night. Storm's bad. We ain't a hotel. I'll pay." "Didn't say we wanted your money." This wasn't going well. Rowan glanced around the room, trying to read the situation. These men weren't hostile exactly, but they weren't friendly either. He was an outsider, and in places like this that marked you as either victim or predator. "Look," Rowan said carefully, "I don't want trouble, just shelter. I'll pay fair price, sleep in the stable if that's all you've got, and be gone by morning." A man at the corner table laughed. "Hear that, Jacob? He'll sleep in the stable, like he's doing us a favor." "Shut up, Tom." The bartender, Jacob apparently, studied Rowan more carefully. "You're a long way from wherever fancy folk come from. What brings you out here?" Rowan considered lying, then decided these men would spot a lie from a mile away. "Running from my own life, mostly." That got a few chuckles. Jacob's expression softened slightly. "Yeah, well, a lot of that going around." He jerked his head toward a narrow staircase. "Got a room upstairs. 2 shillings. Breakfast included, if you don't mind porridge." "That's generous, thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You'll hate the mattress." But Jacob was almost smiling now. Rowan paid, took the key, and climbed the stairs. The room was exactly as promised. Tiny, sparse, with a mattress that felt like sleeping on a bag of rocks. But it was dry and warm, and after the day he'd had, that felt like luxury. He lay down without undressing, listening to rain hammer the roof, and wondered what the hell he was doing with his life. He woke to voices arguing downstairs, loud ones. Rowan sat up, disoriented. The room was dark except for gray light seeping through a single grimy window. The rain had stopped, but the voices hadn't. "Can't keep doing this, Eli. She's going to get herself killed." "So what do you want me to do, Tom? She won't listen. You think I haven't tried? Then make her listen. You're her brother." "Half-brother, and that don't give me authority over Clara's choices. Never has." Rowan stood, moved to the window. Outside, the town looked even smaller in daylight. Muddy streets, weathered buildings, mountains rising in the distance like broken teeth. He checked his pocket watch. 6 in the morning. Downstairs, the argument continued. Against his better judgment, Rowan found himself curious. He washed his face in a basin of cold water, straightened his clothes as best he could, and descended. The tavern's main room held maybe 8 people now, clustered in small groups nursing coffee or tea. The argument had quieted to intense whispers between 3 men at the bar, Jacob, Tom, and a younger man with Clara's same dark hair and sharp features. Eli, presumably. Rowan took a seat at an empty table, trying not to intrude. A woman who might have been Jacob's wife brought him coffee without asking. He thanked her quietly. "You hear about Clara Whitmore?" someone was saying at the next table. 2 older men talking low. "Heard Hale's men visited her again yesterday, 3rd time this month. She's gonna break eventually, everyone does. Maybe, but that girl's got spine. More than her father did, God rest him. Spine don't mean nothing when they come with lawyers and guns." Rowan sipped his coffee, pretending not to listen while absorbing every word. "Excuse me," he said quietly to the man nearest him. "Sorry for eavesdropping, but who's Clara Whitmore?" The man looked him over with obvious suspicion. "Why?" "Just curious. New here. Trying to understand the place." "You a friend of Hale's?" "I don't know anyone named Hale." That seemed to satisfy him slightly. The man leaned back, weighing whether to talk. Finally, "Clara Whitmore's a girl. Well, woman now, I guess. Lives north of here on an old farm. Her father died about 8 months back. Left her the property, but some folks say he died with debts. Other folks say those debts are made up." Made up by who?
Vernon Hale, railroad man, rich as sin, mean as hell. He's been buying up land around here for 2 years, but nobody knows why. Most of it's worthless, rocky soil, bad water. But he wants it anyway, and what Hale wants, he gets. Except from Clara Whitmore. Except from her. She won't sell, won't negotiate, won't even talk to his people. Just keeps working that farm like her father's still alive and everything's fine. The man shook his head. Brave or stupid, hard to tell which. Before Rowan could ask more, Eli broke away from the bar and headed for the door. He moved with the jerky urgency of someone barely keeping panic under control. Jacob called after him. Where are you going? Where do you think? Somebody's got to check on her. Eli, you can't just... But Eli was already gone, the door slamming behind him. Tom muttered something that sounded like a curse, then downed his drink and followed. The room settled into uneasy quiet. Rowan sat there for a long moment, turning the coffee cup in his hands, thinking about broken promises and his mother's voice and the crushing emptiness of ballrooms full of people who wanted nothing real. Then he stood, left coins on the table, and walked out. Dusk. The road north followed a creek that cut through increasingly wild country. Archer picked his way carefully over loose stones and exposed roots. Rowan had no real plan, no clear reason for following Eli and Tom, just a feeling in his gut that wouldn't let him ride away. He found them about 2 miles out, standing in the road arguing with a third man on horseback. As Rowan approached, the rider spotted him and spurred away, disappearing into the trees. Eli spun, hand moving toward something under his coat, a knife probably, then stopped when he recognized Rowan from the tavern. What the hell are you doing here? Honestly? I'm not sure. Rowan kept his hands visible, non-threatening. Who was that? None of your business. Eli. Tom put a warning hand on the younger man's arm. Easy. To Rowan, that was one of Hale's men, probably heading to Claire's place. To do what? Nothing good. Tom studied Rowan with the same suspicious evaluation everyone in this town seemed to employ. Why do you care? I don't know if I do, but I've got nothing better to do today, and you both look like you're heading somewhere interesting. Eli laughed bitterly. Interesting, that's one word for it. He glanced at Tom, some wordless communication passing between them. Fine. You want to see what Vernon Hale's idea of business looks like? Come on. They rode in tense silence. The forest grew thicker, older. The trail narrowed to little more than a game path. Rowan could smell wood smoke before they cleared the trees. When they emerged, he saw the farm, or what was left of it. The main house was small, barely more than a cabin, really, with a sagging roof and walls that had seen better decades. A barn leaned dangerously to one side, held up more by stubbornness than structural integrity. Fences were patched with mismatched wood. Everything about the place screamed poverty and desperation. But someone had tried. Rowan could see it in the neat stack of firewood, the carefully tended vegetable garden, the freshly swept porch. Someone was fighting to keep this place alive. That someone was currently swinging an axe. Clara Whitmore stood beside a chopping block, splitting logs with practiced efficiency. She wore men's work clothes, canvas trousers, a heavy wool shirt, boots caked with mud. Her dark hair was pulled back in a braid that had mostly come loose. She didn't look up when they approached, just swung the axe again, splitting another log clean down the middle. Clara, Eli called out. She ignored him. Swing, split, another log on the block. Clara, damn it, will you listen for 5 seconds? I'm busy, Eli. Hale's men are coming. That stopped her. Clara lowered the axe, turned to face them. Rowan felt something shift in his chest when he saw her fully. She wasn't beautiful, not in the polished, cultivated way of women like Catherine Pemberton. Her face was sun-weathered, her hands calloused, her clothes worn and practical. But there was something in her eyes, a fierce, unflinching strength that hit him harder than any ballroom smile ever had. This was a person who'd looked hardship in the face and refused to blink. How many? She asked. Don't know. Jacob spotted riders heading north about an hour ago. Clara nodded slowly, like she'd been expecting this. All right, you two should go. The hell we will, Tom said. Tom, I appreciate it, but this isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't. Your father was my friend. I'm not leaving. Neither am I, Eli added. Clara's jaw tightened.
For a moment, she looked like she might argue, then her eyes shifted to Rowan. And who's this? Nobody, Rowan said before Eli could answer. Just passing through. Heard there might be trouble. There's always trouble. Clara picked up another log, positioned it on the block. You should pass through faster. Probably, but I'm not going to. She studied him for a long moment, axe in hand, clearly trying to figure out if he was sincere or stupid or dangerous. Finally, she shrugged. Your funeral. Swing, split. They heard the horses before they saw them. 4 riders emerged from the tree line, moving with the casual arrogance of men who expected no resistance. 3 looked like hired muscle, big, armed, mean. The 4th was different, older, well-dressed, calculating eyes that took in everything and revealed nothing. Vernon Hale. He dismounted with the smooth confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. His men stayed on their horses, hands resting near weapons. Miss Whitmore? Hale's voice was smooth as oil. Lovely morning. Clara didn't stop splitting wood. Mr. Hale? I've come with good news. My associates have completed their review of your late father's accounts, and I'm pleased to report we can settle this matter today. There's nothing to settle. I'm afraid there is. Your father borrowed considerably from several creditors before his death. The total debt, with interest, comes to approximately £800. Clara's axe paused mid-swing. That's a lie. I have documentation. Hale produced papers from his coat with theatrical flourish. All properly notarized and filed with the county clerk. Your father's signature appears on each loan agreement. My father never borrowed from anyone. Your father was desperate, Miss Whitmore. Desperate men make poor decisions. But I'm a reasonable man. I'm prepared to take the property in lieu of cash payment. You'll be released from all debt, free to start fresh wherever you like. This is my home. This is £800 you don't have. Hale's smile never wavered. Be practical. You can't work this land alone. You can barely afford to feed yourself. Take my offer. It's generous. Clara set the axe down carefully. Rowan watched her hands shake, not with fear, but with rage barely contained. Get off my property. Miss Whitmore, get off my property! The shout echoed across the valley. Birds scattered from nearby trees. Hale's men shifted in their saddles, hands moving closer to guns. Hale's smile finally cracked. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I'm making is not shooting you for trespassing. Threats won't change the facts. You owe money you can't pay. The law is on my side. The law? Clara laughed, brittle and sharp. You mean the judges you bought? The county clerk you bribed? That law? Careful, Miss Whitmore. Slander is a serious accusation. So is fraud. The air went electric with tension. Rowan found his hand moving toward the pistol he carried in his coat, something he'd brought for protection on the road and never expected to actually need. Hale studied Claire with eyes like a snake measuring prey. I'll give you 1 week to reconsider. After that, I'll be forced to take legal action. Sheriff's men will arrive with eviction papers. If you resist, they'll remove you by force. I'd hate for that to happen. No, you wouldn't. You're right. I wouldn't. Hale remounted his horse with practiced ease. 1 week, Miss Whitmore. Use it wisely. They rode away slowly, taking their time, making it clear they could leave at any speed they wanted because nobody here could stop them. When they were gone, Clara sagged against the chopping block like all the strength had drained out of her at once. £800, she whispered. I don't have £80. I don't have 8. Eli moved toward her, but Tom caught his arm. Give her a minute. Rowan stood there, feeling useless, watching this woman he didn't know fall apart over debts she didn't know and threats she couldn't fight. Every instinct told him to leave, ride back to whatever passed for civilization, forget he'd ever seen this place. Instead, he heard himself say, those papers were forged. Everyone turned to stare at him. What? Clara's voice was barely above a whisper. The loan documents Hale showed you, they were forgeries. I saw his hands when he held them. He was nervous. That's not the behavior of someone holding legitimate debt. That's someone running a confidence scheme. How do you know? Eli demanded. I've seen enough fraud in business dealings to recognize the signs. Hale's operation is sophisticated, but it's still fraud. He's betting you don't have the resources or knowledge to fight back legally. Clara pushed off the chopping block, standing straighter.
So what do I do? Find the truth. Somewhere in this county's records, there's evidence of what Hale's really doing, but you need to know what you're looking for. And you're an expert? No, but I've spent 2 years watching people lie to me about money. I've gotten pretty good at spotting the patterns. Clara studied him with those fierce, calculating eyes. Why do you care?
It was the same question Tom had asked. Rowan still didn't have a good answer. Maybe I'm tired of watching people get crushed by those with more power. Maybe I've got nothing better to do. Does it matter? Yeah, it matters. Because if you're another one of Hale's tricks, I'm not. Then who are you? Rowan met her gaze. Someone who made a promise to find something worth fighting for. I think maybe I just found it. The words hung in the cold air between them. Claire's expression didn't soften exactly, but something shifted. A crack in the armor. A possibility. 1 week, she said finally. You've got 1 week to prove those papers are fake. If you can't, you ride away and never come back. Deal? Rowan held out his hand. Deal. Clara's grip was stronger than most men's he'd shaken in London ballrooms. Rougher, too, calloused from real work instead of symbolic gestures. As the sun climbed higher over the broken-down farm, Rowan realized he'd just committed himself to a fight he didn't fully understand in a place he'd never heard of, for a woman whose name he'd learned less than an hour ago. His mother would have loved this. The storm that had driven him here had passed, but a different kind of storm was just beginning. And for the first time in 2 years, Duke Rowan Blackthorne felt something other than emptiness. He felt alive. The county clerk's office smelled like mildew and old paper. Rowan stood in the doorway, watching a thin man with wire-rimmed spectacles sort through a filing cabinet with the enthusiasm of someone counting grains of sand. "Excuse me," Rowan said. The clerk didn't look up. "Office closes at 4. It's 2:30. Then you've got 90 minutes. What do you need?" "Land records. Property transfers for the Northern Valley, past 3 years." Now the clerk looked up. His eyes narrowed behind the spectacles, taking in Rowan's mud-stained clothes and the general air of someone who'd spent the last 3 days sleeping in a barn and eating whatever Clara could scrape together for dinner. "Why? Does it matter?" "Might. Depends on who's asking." The clerk set down his papers with deliberate slowness. "You working for someone?" "Myself." "That's not an answer." Rowan stepped closer to the counter, keeping his voice level. "I'm researching property transactions in the Northern Valley. Public records should be available for public review. Is there a problem?" The clerk's jaw tightened. "No problem. Just don't get many strangers coming in asking about Northern Valley properties these days. Makes a man curious." "Consider your curiosity noted. Can I see the records or not?" For a long moment, the clerk just stared at him. Then he shuffled toward a different cabinet, moving with the speed of cooling molasses. He pulled out a leather-bound ledger, dropped it on the counter with a thud that sent dust swirling into the afternoon light. "Northern Valley transactions, past 3 years." The clerk tapped the book with one finger. "You damage this, you pay for it. You remove it from this office, I call the sheriff. We clear?" Crystal. Rowan carried the ledger to a small table by the window and opened it. The first few pages were routine: families selling parcels to neighbors, estate settlements, normal transfers that happen in any rural community. Then, about 18 months back, the pattern shifted. Vernon Hale's name started appearing. Again and again and again. Rowan traced the entries with his finger, his chest tightening with each transaction. The Mackenzie farm, sold to Hale for £60 after outstanding debts, surfaced. The Morrison property, transferred to Hale's holding company following the owner's unexpected death. The Chen family's land, seized by the county for unpaid taxes, then immediately purchased by Hale at auction. 15 properties in 18 months, all following the same pattern, all sold for a fraction of their value, all to Vernon Hale. "Find what you're looking for?" Rowan glanced up. The clerk stood a few feet away, arms crossed, that same narrow-eyed suspicion carved into his face. "These transactions," Rowan said carefully, "were they all legitimate? Recorded in the official county ledger, aren't they?" "That's not what I asked." The clerk's expression didn't change. "Everything that gets recorded in that book is legitimate by definition. That's how official records work. Even if the debts were fabricated, even if the paperwork was forged, You making an accusation? I'm asking a question. Sounds like an accusation to me. The clerk moved closer, lowering his voice. Listen, friend, I don't know where you're from or what you think you're doing, but you're treading on dangerous ground. Vernon Hale is a respected businessman. If you're planning to spread lies about him, I'm not spreading anything. I'm reading public records. Then read them and keep your theories to yourself. The clerk's hand trembled slightly as he pointed toward the ledger. And when you're done, get out of my office. Rowan held the man's gaze. Fear. That's what he saw there, hiding behind the hostility. This clerk knew exactly what Hale was doing, and he was terrified of it. How much did he pay you? Rowan asked quietly. The clerk's face went white. Get out. How much? I said, get out! Rowan stood slowly, closed the ledger, and slid it across the counter. Thank you for your assistance. He walked out before the clerk could respond, his mind already racing through what he'd learned. 15 properties, all acquired through suspicious means, all concentrated in the northern valley around Clara's farm. Why? The land itself was worthless. Everyone in town had said so. Rocky soil, bad water, barely suitable for subsistence farming. So what was Hale really after? Rowan untied Archer from the hitching post and swung into the saddle. The sun was dropping toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. He needed to get back to Clara's farm before dark, but first he had one more stop to make. The tavern was busier than it had been that first morning. 24 men crowded around tables, drinking, playing cards, arguing about things that probably didn't matter. Rowan spotted Jacob behind the bar and made his way over. You're still here, Jacob said, not quite a question. Apparently. Got a minute? Jacob glanced around the crowded room, then jerked his head toward a back door. They stepped into a small storage area filled with barrels and crates. The noise from the tavern became muffled. What do you need? Jacob asked. Information about the Northern Valley. Everyone wants information about the Northern Valley these days. What specifically? Why is Hale buying it all up? The land's worthless, but he spent a fortune acquiring properties. There has to be a reason. Jacob pulled out a cigarette, lit it with practiced ease. You ask a lot of questions for someone who's just passing through. Plans change. That they do. Jacob exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. You want the rumor or the truth? Both. Rumor is silver, deposits under the valley. Some surveyor did tests a few years back, found traces. Not enough to confirm a major vein, but enough to get people excited. Then the surveyor disappeared, his records vanished, and everyone forgot about it. Except Hale. Except Hale. Jacob tapped ash onto the floor. The truth? Nobody knows. Maybe it's silver. Maybe it's something else. Maybe Hale's just crazy and likes collecting worthless land. But whatever he's after, he wants it bad enough to ruin families over it. And nobody's tried to stop him. Who's going to stop him? Sheriff's on his payroll. County clerk takes his bribes. Half the business owners in this town owe him money. Jacob took another long drag. You think you can stop him? With what? Good intentions and pretty speeches? With evidence. Evidence, Jacob laughed bitterly. You really are from somewhere else, aren't you? Out here, evidence don't mean nothing when the law's already been bought. Then what does mean something? Jacob met his eyes. Survival. That's all that matters. Keeping your head down, protecting your own, and not making enemies with men who can crush you. He stubbed out the cigarette. Clara's father learned that lesson too late. Don't make the same mistake. What happened to him? Clara's father? Fell off a horse. Broke his neck. That's the official story. And the unofficial one? The unofficial one is he was asking too many questions about Hale's land purchases. Started nosing around, talking to families who'd lost their property. Then one day his horse threw him, and he died. Jacob's voice went flat. Funny thing, though, Samuel Whitmore was the best horseman in the valley. Rode since he was a boy. Never got thrown once in 40 years. Then suddenly his horse bolts for no reason and kills him. The implications settled over Rowan like cold water. You think Hale had him killed? I think Samuel Whitmore knew something dangerous, and dead men don't talk. Jacob moved toward the door. Which is why you should ride away while you still can. Clara's stubborn as hell, but she's smart enough to know when she's beaten. Eventually she'll take Hale's offer and move on. You sure about that? No, Jacob admitted, but I hope so. because the alternative gets her killed. Back at the farm, Rowan found Clara in the barn trying to fix a broken wagon wheel with materials that should have been replaced a decade ago. She looked up when he entered, her face smudged with grease, her hands wrapped around a wrench she was using like a hammer. "Any luck?" she asked. Rowan told her everything, the land records, the clerk's fear, Jacob's story about her father. Clara listened without interrupting, her expression growing harder with each detail. When he finished, she set down the wrench carefully. "So Hale's been doing this for 18 months. Destroying families, stealing land, probably killed my father, and everyone knows, but nobody does anything. They're scared. They're cowards. Maybe, or maybe they're just trying to survive." Rowan moved closer. "Jacob thinks you should take Hale's offer. Leave while you still can." "Jacob can go to hell." "Clara, chip." "No." She stood, facing him directly. "This is my home. My father's home. I'm not letting some railroad thief steal it because he's got money and guns and everyone's too afraid to stand up to him. Standing up gets you killed." "Then I'll die standing." Her voice cracked slightly. "What else am I supposed to do, Rowan? Run? Start over somewhere else with nothing? I've got no family except Eli, no money, no skills except farming. This land is all I have. You want me to just hand it over? I want you to stay alive." "For what? To spend the rest of my life working someone else's kitchen, sleeping in someone else's house, always wondering if I could have fought harder?" She shook her head. "I'd rather die here than live like that." The barn fell quiet except for distant cricket sounds and Archer shifting in his stall. Rowan studied Clara's face, the stubborn set of her jaw, the fire in her eyes that refused to be extinguished no matter how hopeless things looked. This was what his mother had meant. Not perfection, not elegance or breeding or social grace, just raw, unbreakable courage in the face of overwhelming odds. "Then we find proof," Rowan said. "Real proof. Something even Hale's bought judges can't ignore." "How?" "Everything's been erased, covered up, destroyed." "Not everything." "Your father was investigating Hale before he died. He must have found something. Otherwise, why kill him?" Clara's eyes widened slightly. "You think he kept records?" "I think he was smart enough to hide evidence where Hale couldn't find it. The question is where." They searched the house first. Every drawer, every cabinet, every loose floorboard. Clara moved through her father's belongings with a mixture of determination and grief, pulling out old letters, faded photographs, receipts for feed and supplies that meant nothing now. Rowan took the bedroom while Clara handled the kitchen. He checked under the mattress, behind the headboard, inside the wardrobe that held 3 shirts and 2 pairs of trousers worn thin at the knees. Nothing. "Find anything?" Clara called from downstairs. "No, you?" "Just old bills and disappointment." Rowan sat on the edge of the bed, frustration building. They were running out of time and places to look. In 4 days, Hale's deadline would expire and the sheriff would arrive with eviction papers. Unless they found something. His eyes fell on the wardrobe again. It was old, really old, hand-carved from oak that had probably been growing when this valley was still wilderness. The kind of furniture that got passed down through generations, built to last forever. Rowan stood, moved closer, examined the back panel. It was just slightly too thick. He knocked on it, solid. He knocked on the side panel, also solid. He knocked on the back again, hollow. "Clara," he called, "get up here." She appeared in the doorway, breathless. "What is it?" "Help me move this." Together they dragged the heavy wardrobe away from the wall. Behind it, the wallpaper showed a rectangular seam, barely visible. Clara's breath caught. "I never knew this was here." "Your father did." They peeled back the wallpaper carefully, revealing a small door cut into the wall itself. No handle, no lock, just pressure points that released when Clara pushed in the right sequence, something her father must have taught her when she was young, disguised as a game. The door swung open. Inside was a space no bigger than a bread box, and inside that space was a wooden box about the size of a thick book. Clara lifted it out with shaking hands. The wood was smooth, well-crafted, with her father's initials carved into the lid. "Open it," Rowan said quietly. She did. Papers. Dozens of them. Receipts, letters, survey maps, photographs. Clara spread them across the bed while Rowan lit every lamp in the room to see better. What they found made his blood run cold. Survey reports confirming massive silver deposits under the northern valley. Geological assessments showing potential veins worth millions. Letters between Hale and various business partners discussing how to acquire the land without driving up prices. Forged debt documents with the real signatures underneath, visible when held to light. Photographs of meetings between Hale, the county clerk, the sheriff, and 3 men whose names appeared on mining company letterheads.
He knew, Clara whispered. My father knew everything. That's why they killed him. Clara picked up one letter, dated 2 weeks before her father's death. It was addressed to a newspaper editor in the state capital, outlining everything Hale had done. The letter had never been sent. He was going to expose them, Clara said. He was going to tell the whole world what Hale was doing.
But he wanted proof first, so he gathered all this. Rowan held up a survey map showing drill sites marked across the valley. This is enough. With these documents, we can destroy Hale's entire operation. Clara looked at him with something like hope breaking through the despair. Are you sure? The evidence is solid. Forged documents, bribery, fraud, conspiracy. Even a bought judge would have trouble ignoring this. Rowan started organizing the papers. We take these to the state attorney general's office, file charges, get an investigation started before Hale's deadline expires. The capital's 3 days' ride from here. Then we leave tonight. Clara shook her head. I can't leave the farm undefended. Hale's men will burn it down the second they know I'm gone.
So we send someone else. Eli, Tom, someone you trust. I don't trust anyone with this except myself. Clara's voice was firm. My father died protecting this evidence. I'm not handing it to someone else. Then I'll go. You stay here, defend the farm. I'll ride to the capital, file the charges, bring back help. You? Clara looked at him skeptically. No offense, but why would they believe you? You're nobody. A stranger passing through. They'll think you stole these documents, made up the story. She was right. Rowan had no credibility, no connections in this territory. He could walk into the Attorney General's office with ironclad evidence, and they'd probably throw him out as a crank. Unless...
The thought formed slowly, like ice crystallizing on water. Rowan had spent 2 years trying to forget who he was, what his name meant. But names had power, titles opened doors. Even out here, in the frontier territories where England's nobility meant almost nothing, a duke could still command attention. They'll believe me, Rowan said quietly, because I'm Duke Rowan Blackthorne. My family has connections in Parliament, relationships with the Crown, influence that reaches even to these territories. He met Clara's shocked stare. I can get these documents in front of people who matter, people Hale can't buy or threaten. Clara stepped back like he'd slapped her. You're a duke? Yes. A duke? Like actual nobility? Yes. And you've been sleeping in my barn and eating my food and fixing my fences for 3 days without mentioning this? It didn't seem relevant. Didn't seem... Clara laughed, high and sharp. You're insane. Completely insane. What's a duke doing out here? Why aren't you in London, or wherever dukes live, doing duke things? Because I was tired of duke things. Tired of people who only cared about my title. I came out here looking for something real. Well, congratulations. You found poverty and desperation and a farm that's falling apart. Real enough for you? Rowan moved toward her. I found someone worth fighting for. Yes, that's real enough. Clara stared at him, something complicated moving behind her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or hope. Or both tangled together so tightly they couldn't be separated. If you're lying, she said slowly, if this is some trick, it's not. Then prove it. Go to the capital. Use whatever power you have. Stop Hale. Her voice hardened. And if you can't, don't come back, because I'd rather die fighting than live knowing I trusted the wrong person. That night, Rowan prepared to leave. He packed the documents carefully in waterproof leather, loaded supplies onto Archer, checked his pistol and knife. Clara watched from the porch, silent. Eli showed up just before dawn with Tom and 2 other men Rowan recognized from the tavern. Heard you're riding out, Eli said. Figured you might want company. It's dangerous. Everything's dangerous these days. Tom checked his rifle. Besides, can't let a duke ride alone into hostile territory. Bad for our reputation. Rowan looked at Clara. She nodded slightly. All right, he said. But we ride hard and we don't stop. 3 days there, file the charges, 3 days back. 1 week total. And if Hale's men come while you're gone, Clara asked, then you do what you do best. Survive. Rowan swung into the saddle. I'll be back, I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep. I haven't broken one yet. He thought she might say something else, but she just turned and walked back into the house. The door closed behind her with a sound like finality. They rode out as the sun broke over the mountains, 4 men carrying evidence that could destroy an empire. Rowan didn't look back. If he did, he wasn't sure he'd be able to leave. The first day passed without incident. They pushed the horses hard, covering ground quickly, speaking little. That night they camped in a clearing, taking turns on watch. Tom took first shift. Around midnight, he woke Rowan with a hand over his mouth. Someone's following us, Tom whispered. Rowan rolled out of his blanket, reaching for his pistol. How many? Can't tell. Saw movement about a quarter-mile back. Could be animals. Could be Hale's men. Wake the others. They broke camp in darkness, moving as quietly as possible. Behind them, Rowan heard horses, not trying to hide anymore, just coming. Ride, he said. They ran, through the forest, down rocky trails, across streams that soaked them to the bone. The pursuit stayed close, too close. These weren't random travelers. These were hunters who knew exactly who they were chasing. Dawn found them at a river crossing, the water high and fast from recent storms. On the far bank, the trail continued toward the capital. Behind them, riders appeared through the trees, 6 of them, all armed. Rowan recognized the man in front, one of Hale's hired guns from the farm. End of the line, the man called across the water. Toss the documents over and you can leave. Fight, and we kill you here. Rowan's hand moved to his pistol. 4 men against 6. Bad odds. Worse terrain. If they tried to cross the river, they'd be shot before they made the other side. Eli's horse danced nervously. What do we do? Tom raised his rifle. We fight. We'll die. Then we die. But we don't hand over what we came for. Rowan looked at the leather case strapped to his saddle. Everything Clara's father had died protecting. Everything that could save her farm and destroy Hale's operation. He thought about his mother's voice, about promises, about finding something worth fighting for. Tom's right, Rowan said. We don't give them anything. The man across the river shrugged. Your choice. Guns came up on both sides, and then, from the forest to their left, more riders appeared. 12 of them, then 24. Farmers, ranchers, men from the tavern, men whose families had been destroyed by Hale's schemes. Jacob rode at their front, rifle across his saddle. Seems like you boys might need help, Jacob called. Hale's men looked at the new arrivals, did the math, and slowly lowered their weapons. This ain't over, their leader said. Yeah, it is, Jacob replied. You just don't know it yet. Now get out of here before we decide following people is worth shooting over. They left, slowly, reluctantly. But they left. Rowan turned to Jacob. How did you? Clara sent word. Said you might run into trouble. Jacob grinned. Turns out a lot of folks in this valley are tired of being scared. Figured it was time to do something about it. Tom laughed, releasing tension. Took you long enough. Better late than dead. Jacob gestured toward the river. Now get moving. You've got a duke to play and a criminal to bury. They crossed the river together, dozens of riders moving as one. And for the first time since arriving in this valley, Rowan felt like maybe they actually had a chance. The state capital rose from the plains like something out of a fever dream. 3-story buildings, cobblestone streets, gas lamps that actually worked. After a week in the valley's mud and poverty, the sight of it made Rowan's chest tighten with something he couldn't quite name. Relief, maybe. Or dread that even here, civilization might not be enough to stop what was coming. Jacob and most of the riders peeled off at the city limits. This is your show now, Jacob said, gripping Rowan's hand. Don't waste it. I won't. And Rowan, if this doesn't work, don't come back. Clara won't survive seeing you fail. The words sat heavy in Rowan's gut as he watched them ride away. Then he turned Archer toward the government district, Eli and Tom flanking him like guards escorting a prisoner to execution. The Attorney General's office occupied the 2nd floor of a granite building that probably cost more than Clara's entire farm. Inside, a secretary with perfect posture and a dress that screamed expensive looked up from her desk with the kind of smile reserved for people she planned to dismiss immediately. May I help you? Her tone suggested she'd rather not. I need to see Attorney General Morrison. It's urgent. Do you have an appointment? No, but then I'm afraid Mr. Morrison isn't available. If you'd like to schedule, tell him Duke Rowan Blackthorne is here regarding criminal conspiracy, fraud, and murder in the Northern Territories. Rowan kept his voice level, formal, the tone he'd learned in London ballrooms, the one that made servants straighten and doors open. Tell him I have evidence. And tell him if he doesn't see me in the next 5 minutes, I'll walk across the street to the newspaper office and make this the headline of tomorrow's edition. The secretary's smile evaporated. She stood, disappeared through a heavy oak door, and returned 30 seconds later looking pale. Mr. Morrison will see you now. The Attorney General was a compact man in his 50s with iron gray hair and eyes that evaluated Rowan the way a jeweler evaluates a stone, looking for flaws, calculating value. His office smelled of leather and tobacco and old money. Duke Blackthorne. Morrison didn't stand. Your reputation precedes you, though I confess I'm surprised to find you in my territory looking like you've been living in a ditch. Appearances can be deceiving. Indeed. Morrison gestured to chairs. Please, sit. Tell me what's so urgent it requires threats of public scandal. Rowan remained standing. Vernon Hale is running a land fraud operation in the Northern Valley. He's been using forged documents, bribed officials, and intimidation to steal property from farmers. I have evidence that proves it. He placed the leather case on Morrison's desk. The Attorney General didn't touch it. That's quite an accusation. It's documented fact. Survey reports, forged debt papers, correspondence between Hale and corrupt officials, everything you need to file charges. And where did you acquire this evidence? From a dead man's hidden records, Samuel Whitmore. He was killed 8 months ago under suspicious circumstances. Suspicious how? Thrown from his horse, despite being the best rider in the valley, right after he started investigating Hale's operation. Morrison leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. You understand how this sounds? A British duke shows up claiming conspiracy and murder based on documents allegedly hidden by a dead farmer? No witnesses, no corroboration, just papers that could have been fabricated by anyone. The geological surveys are genuine, so are the letters. Any expert can verify. Any expert Hale hasn't already bought, you mean? Morrison's expression didn't change. You're asking me to launch an investigation that will cost significant resources, destroy a prominent businessman's reputation, and potentially embarrass powerful people in this territory. Based on what? Your word? Rowan felt the floor shifting under him. Based on evidence. Evidence you could have manufactured. For all I know, you're working some angle yourself. Maybe you want Hale's land. Maybe you're settling a personal grudge. Maybe you're just another British noble looking for adventure in the frontier. Morrison finally reached for the leather case, but didn't open it. I'll have my people review these documents. If they check out, we'll consider next steps. But I'm not filing charges based on one man's accusations, Duke or otherwise. How long will the review take? Weeks? Maybe months? These things require thoroughness. We don't have months. Hale's deadline expires in 4 days. He's going to evict Clara Whitmore and seize her property. If we don't act now, then Miss Whitmore should have paid her debts. Morrison's voice went cold. I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, Your Grace, but I can't halt legal proceedings based on unverified accusations. If the woman owes money, she owes money. The debt is forged. According to documents you claim to have found. Documents I haven't verified. Documents that may themselves be forgeries. Morrison stood, signaling the meeting was over. Leave the evidence. I'll review it, but I won't make promises I can't keep. Rowan wanted to grab the man by his expensive collar and shake him until he understood. People were dying. Families were being destroyed. Clara was going to lose everything. But Morrison's face was set like stone, unmovable by anything as insignificant as desperation or truth. One more thing, Morrison said as Rowan turned to leave. Vernon Hale is a major donor to this territory's development fund. He's built schools, funded roads, supported businesses. He's not some cartoon villain. He's a respected member of this community. So when you go making accusations, remember that destroying him destroys a lot of good, along with whatever bad you think you've uncovered. He killed Samuel Whitmore. You think he did? There's a difference. Morrison opened his door. Good day, Your Grace. I'll be in touch. Outside, Eli and Tom waited on the steps. One look at Rowan's face told them everything. "He's not going to do anything," Eli said. "Not a question. He'll review the evidence, eventually, maybe." Rowan wanted to put his fist through something. "Weeks," he said. "We've got 4 days." Tom spat into the gutter. "So we wasted the trip." "No. Morrison's not the only option." Rowan scanned the street until he found what he was looking for, the newspaper office Jacob had mentioned. "Come on." The Territory Herald occupied a cramped storefront that smelled of ink and ambition. A young man with wild hair and ink-stained fingers looked up from a printing press as they entered. "We're closed for—" He stopped, taking in Rowan's appearance. "You're either very lost or very desperate. Which is it?" "Desperate. You the editor?" "Owner, editor, reporter, and janitor. Martin Webb. What do you want?" "To give you the story of your career." Rowan pulled out copies he'd made of the key documents before leaving Morrison's office. "How much do you know about Vernon Hale's land acquisitions?" Webb's eyes sharpened. "I know he's bought half the Northern Valley in 2 years. I know families who used to own that land are now begging in the streets. I know asking questions about it is a good way to lose advertisers." He crossed his arms. "Why?" "Because it's all fraud. Forged documents, bribed officials, murdered witnesses. And I can prove it." For the next hour, Rowan laid it out. Every transaction, every forged signature, every suspicious death. Webb listened, asked sharp questions, examined the documents with the critical eye of someone who'd been lied to professionally. Finally, he sat back. "This is real." "Yes." "You understand what publishing this means? Hale will sue me into oblivion. His friends will pull their advertisements. I'll be lucky if this paper survives the week." "Then don't publish it." Rowan met his eyes. "Or publish it and change everything. Your choice." Webb laughed, running his hands through his hair. "You're insane, you know that?" "I've been told." "And you're serious? You'll stake your reputation as a duke on this story?" "I'll stake everything on it." Webb looked at the documents again, then at Rowan, then at the printing press sitting silent in the corner. "When do you need this?" "Tomorrow. Front page, before Hale's eviction deadline." "That's impossible. I'd need to typeset, print, distribute. So get help. Hire people. I'll pay for it." "With what?" "You look like you can't afford breakfast." Rowan pulled a folded letter from his coat. His family seal was pressed into the wax. "Take this to First National Bank. Show them the seal. Tell them to extend credit under the Blackthorn account. Whatever you need." Webb stared at the letter like it might explode. "You're really a duke." "Unfortunately." "And you're doing this for some farmer you barely know?" "I'm doing this because it's right. Now are you in or not?" Webb grabbed the letter. "I'm in. But if this blows up in our faces, I'm writing a very unflattering obituary for both of us." They worked through the night. Webb wrote while Rowan verified facts and Eli and Tom ran errands, fetching supplies, bribing delivery boys, spreading word to every corner of the city that tomorrow's edition would be worth reading. By dawn, the press was running. By noon, the newspapers hit the streets. The headline read, "Railroad Baron's Empire Built on Fraud and Blood." Below it, Webb had laid out everything. Names, dates, forged documents reproduced for everyone to see. The geological surveys proving silver deposits. Letters showing the conspiracy. And Samuel Whitmore's name, cleared at last. Rowan bought a copy from a street vendor and stood there reading words he'd helped write, feeling something close to hope for the first time in days. Then Eli grabbed his arm. "We've got a problem." Down the street, a crowd was gathering outside the sheriff's office. Angry voices carried on the wind. Rowan pushed closer, Webb following with a notebook already open. Sheriff Hayes stood on the steps, red-faced and furious, waving a copy of the Herald. "This is slander, every word of it. I'll have Webb arrested for libel." "On what grounds?" someone shouted from the crowd. "On the grounds that it's lies designed to damage Mr. Hale's reputation." "So the documents are fake?" Webb called out, his voice cutting through the noise. "The forged signatures? The bribed officials? All fake?" Hayes' face went darker. "I don't have to answer to you." "Actually, you do. That's how journalism works." Webb pushed forward, pencil poised. "For the record, Sheriff Hayes, did you or did you not accept payments from Vernon Hale in exchange for favorable treatment?" "I never— this is outrageous. Did you or did you not arrest families on fraudulent debt charges at Hale's request? Hayes sputtered, trying to form words, but the crowd was growing. Workers, merchants, families who'd lost their land, people who'd been too scared to speak up before but found courage in numbers. "Where's Hale?" someone demanded. "Probably running," another voice answered. "Rats always run when the light hits them." But they were wrong. Vernon Hale walked up the street with the calm confidence of a man who owned everything in sight. He carried himself like royalty, expensive suit, immaculate, expression carefully neutral. Behind him walked 3 lawyers and twice as many hired guns trying to look like bodyguards. The crowd parted. Hale climbed the steps beside Hayes, surveyed the assembled people like a landowner reviewing livestock, and smiled. "Good afternoon," his voice carried without shouting. "I understand there's been some unfortunate confusion thanks to this morning's newspaper. I'm here to clear the air." "Clear the air?" Webb pushed forward. "Mr. Hale, how do you respond to evidence of systematic fraud?" "Evidence?" Hale pulled out his own copy of the Herald, held it up. "This isn't evidence. This is fiction. Desperate fabrications by people trying to avoid legitimate debts." His eyes found Rowan in the crowd, including, apparently, a British duke who should have stayed in England where he belongs. The crowd turned, looking at Rowan. Hale's smile widened. "Yes, that's right. Duke Rowan Blackthorne, the man behind these accusations. A foreigner with no ties to this territory, no understanding of our laws, who's decided to play hero for reasons I can only imagine." He paused for effect. "Perhaps he's after the silver himself. Perhaps he's in league with criminal elements trying to steal land through slander. Whatever his motives, they're not pure." "My motives are stopping you from destroying innocent families," Rowan said, his voice carrying. "Innocent. Miss Clara Whitmore owes £800 in legitimate debt. That's not my opinion. That's documented fact filed with the county clerk. Documented forgery filed by a clerk you bribed. Prove it." "I just did. In the newspaper. With your own letters." Hale laughed, and it sounded genuinely amused. "Those letters are clever forgeries. My lawyers are already preparing defamation suits against Mr. Webb and anyone who aided him, including you, Your Grace. I hope your family's fortune can handle British nobility being sued in American courts. It won't look good in the London papers." The threat hung in the air. Webb went pale. Even Rowan felt it. The weight of Hale's power, the machinery of law and money and influence grinding into motion. "But I'm a reasonable man," Hale continued. "I don't want this to escalate, so I'm making a public offer. Miss Whitmore has until sunset to accept my original terms. After that, the eviction proceeds and the lawsuits begin. Her choice." "That's 3 days early," Eli shouted. "You said a week." "I said 1 week from my last visit. That was 4 days ago. The deadline is today. Sunset." Hale checked his pocket watch. 6 hours from now, I suggest someone rides fast to deliver the news." He descended the steps, his entourage closing around him. The crowd parted again, people too confused and scared to do anything else. Rowan tried to push forward, but hands grabbed him, Tom and Eli, holding him back. "Don't," Tom hissed. "Not here. Not like this." Hale paused at the edge of the crowd, turned back. "Oh, and Your Grace, tell Miss Whitmore that if she burns my offer this time, I'll make sure she doesn't get another one. Not from me, not from anyone. She'll spend the rest of her life working off that debt in ways I'm sure she won't enjoy. We clear?" The implication was obvious, disgusting. Rage flooded Rowan's vision red. He broke free from Tom and Eli, crossed the distance to Hale in 3 strides, and hit him. The punch landed square on Hale's jaw, snapping his head sideways. The businessman staggered, caught himself, touched his split lip with genuine surprise. "You just assaulted me," Hale said quietly. "In front of witnesses, including the sheriff." "Arrest me then." "Oh, I will do much worse than arrest you." Hale's smile returned, blood on his teeth now. "I'm going to destroy you. Your reputation, your fortune, everything you brought to this territory. And then I'm going to take Clara Whitmore's farm anyway, because you just proved my point. You're not a hero. You're a violent foreigner who can't control himself. No judge in this territory will side with you now." Hayes moved forward, hand on his pistol. "Duke Blackthorne, you're under arrest for assault." The crowd erupted in shouts, some defending Rowan, others defending Hale, most just confused and scared. Webb was writing frantically, Hale's lawyers were already conferring, and Rowan stood there, his knuckles bleeding, watching his one chance to help Clara evaporate like morning fog. Eli grabbed his arm. "We need to go. Now." "I'm not running. You're not helping her by getting arrested either. Move." They ran, down alleys, through side streets, losing themselves in the maze of the city, while shouts echoed behind them. Finally, they collapsed in a stable yard 3 blocks away, breathing hard. "What the hell were you thinking?" Tom demanded. I wasn't." "No kidding. You just gave Hale everything he needed. Now you look like the criminal and he looks like the victim." Rowan leaned against the stable wall, letting the truth of it sink in. Tom was right. He'd lost control. Let rage override strategy. Made everything worse. "We need to get back to Clara," Eli said. "Warn her about the deadline change. Give her time to decide." "Decide what?" Rowan's voice came out hollow. "Take Hale's offer or lose everything anyway. Those are her options now because of me." "Because of Hale," Tom corrected. "Don't do the man's work for him by taking all the blame." But the blame sat in Rowan's chest like a stone. He'd promised Clara he could stop this. Promised he'd bring justice. Instead, he'd brought chaos and assault charges and a lawsuit that would probably bankrupt his family. His mother would have been disappointed. The thought hurt worse than any of the rest. They stole horses. There was no time to be legal about it, and rode out of the city at dusk. Behind them, the Herald's special evening edition hit the streets with a new headline: "British Duke assaults local businessman." Webb had tried, written the truth as best he could. But truth didn't matter when power controlled the narrative. They rode through the night, pushing the stolen horses hard enough that Rowan felt guilty, but didn't slow down. Dawn found them halfway back to the valley, exhausted and covered in road dust. That's when they saw the smoke, black columns rising from the direction of Clara's farm. Too much smoke. Too dark. "No," Eli breathed. They spurred the horses faster, fear driving them now instead of urgency. The smoke grew thicker as they approached, choking the morning air with the smell of burning wood and something else. Something that made Rowan's stomach turn. They crested the final hill and saw it. The barn was gone. Collapsed into itself, still burning. The fields around the house were scorched black, fences destroyed. And the farmhouse itself. The front door hung off its hinges, windows shattered, walls marked with bullet holes and axe strikes. Rowan was off his horse before it fully stopped, running toward the house with his pistol drawn. "Clara! Clara!" Silence answered him. He burst through the broken door into chaos. Furniture overturned, dishes smashed, blood on the floorboards. Not a lot, but enough to make his heart stop. "Clara!" His voice cracked. "Upstairs!" Tom's shout carried from above. Rowan took the stairs 3 at a time. Found Tom standing in the bedroom doorway, his face white. The room had been destroyed. The wardrobe smashed open, the hidden compartment exposed and empty. Everything torn apart like animals had been through it. But Clara wasn't there. "Where is she?" Rowan demanded. "Gone." Tom pointed to the window. "Looks like she went out this way. There's rope marks on the sill." Eli appeared behind them, holding something. Clara's axe. The handle was broken, the blade covered in blood that wasn't hers. "She fought," Eli said quietly. "Hard." "Then where?" A voice called from outside, weak but alive. "Here." They rushed out to find Clara emerging from the tree line, supported by Jacob. She was alive but barely, face bruised, arm wrapped in makeshift bandages, moving like everything hurt. "Clara." Rowan reached for her, but she pulled away. "Don't. You're hurt. I said don't touch me." Her voice was cold enough to stop him dead. "Where were you?" "The capital. Fighting for you. We published everything, exposed Hale, while his men burned my home." Clara's eyes were empty of everything except exhaustion. "They came last night, dozens of them. Said the deadline moved up, said I had until sunset to surrender the deed or they'd take it by force. We tried to get back. Jacob and the others held them off as long as they could, but there were too many." She gestured weakly at the smoking ruins. "They took everything, the livestock, the tools, anything worth selling. Then they burned the barn and told me I had until today to sign or they'd come back and finish the job." Rowan felt the world tilting. "Did you sign?" Clara looked at him with something too tired to be anger. What choice did I have? My home was burning. People were dying. You were gone playing Duke in the city while everything here fell apart. She pulled a paper from her pocket. Transfer of deed signed in her shaky handwriting. I gave them the land. It's over. No, we can fight this. Morrison's reviewing the evidence. Webb published. I don't care about Morrison or Webb or your evidence. Clara's voice finally broke. I'm done. You hear me? I'm done fighting. I'm done losing. I'm done with all of it. She turned and walked away, Jacob supporting her. Rowan stood there in the ruins of everything he'd tried to save and felt the full weight of his failure crushing down. He'd promised to protect her, promised to stop Hale, promised to bring justice. Instead, he'd brought ashes and surrender and the bitter taste of defeat. Eli found Rowan 3 hours later sitting in the remains of the barn, holding a piece of charred wood that might have once been part of Clara's father's workbench. She's at Jacob's, Eli said quietly. Won't talk to anyone, won't eat, just sits there staring at nothing. Rowan didn't respond. What was there to say? He'd failed. Completely. Spectacularly. The kind of failure that destroyed more than just property. Tom's organizing the men, Eli continued. Says we can still fight this. Says the deed transfer was under duress, won't hold up legally. It'll hold up fine. Hale owns the sheriff, the clerk, probably half the judges. He'll make it legal. Rowan threw the wood fragment into the ash. I made everything worse. If I'd just stayed out of it, then Clara would still be alone and Hale would still be stealing. Eli sat down beside him, his boots crunching on debris. You tried. That's more than most people did. Trying doesn't rebuild her barn, doesn't give her back the land. No, but it gave her hope for a while. That's worth something. Rowan looked at Clara's half-brother, this young man who'd lost just as much but somehow wasn't drowning in self-pity. How are you not angry? I'm furious, but anger without direction just burns you up inside. Eli picked up his own piece of charred wood, examined it like it held answers. My father, Clara's father, he used to say that fighting isn't about winning every time. It's about showing up every time, even when you know you'll lose. That's a terrible philosophy. Maybe, but it kept him swinging until the end. Eli stood, offered his hand. Come on. Sitting in ashes won't fix anything. Rowan let himself be pulled up. They walked back toward the house, past scorched earth and broken fences and all the evidence of Hale's victory. Inside, Tom had spread a map across the kitchen table. A dozen men crowded around it, farmers, ranchers, workers who'd ridden with them to the capital. Their faces were hard with determination that Rowan didn't feel. Here's what we know, Tom was saying, pointing to marks on the map. Hale's operation is centered here at his main office. He keeps records, staff, probably copies of all the forged documents. If we could get inside, we'd be arrested for breaking and entering, someone interrupted, then hanged for theft. Not if we had legitimate cause, not if we were serving a warrant. What warrant? Morrison hasn't filed charges. Then we make him. Tom looked up as Rowan entered. You still have those documents? The ones Morrison wouldn't act on? Rowan nodded slowly. He'd made copies before leaving the capital, hidden them in his saddlebag out of paranoid caution that now seemed prescient. Good, because Webb's article caused enough noise that Morrison can't completely ignore it. Public pressure's building. If we push harder, it won't matter. Clara's voice cut through the planning. She stood in the doorway, Jacob behind her looking worried. Morrison's not going to file charges. The governor's not going to intervene. Nobody with real power cares what happens to people like us. Clara, Rowan started. Don't. I'm not interested in more promises you can't keep. She moved to the table, looked at the map with empty eyes. Hale won. He always wins. That's how the world works. So what? We just give up? Tom demanded. Let him take everything? He already took everything. Not everything. He took your land, your home, but he hasn't taken your fight. Clara laughed, bitter and broken. My fight? I don't have any fight left. I'm done, Tom. I'm going to find work somewhere. Maybe the city, maybe farther. Somewhere Hale's name doesn't reach, and I can forget this place ever existed. The room went silent. Outside, wind moved through the valley, carrying ash and the smell of destruction. Rowan watched Clara's face and saw his own despair reflected there. This was what defeat looked like. Not dramatic, not noble, just tired people making survival calculations. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Clara met his eyes. "For what? Trying to help? Making things worse? Punching Hale and giving him everything he needed to destroy us faster?" She shook her head. "Doesn't matter. What's done is done. It matters to me." "Then you're a fool." But her voice cracked on the words. "You should go back to England, back to your ballrooms and fancy estates. This isn't your world." "Maybe not." "But you are." The words came out before Rowan could stop them. "You're the reason I stayed. The reason I fought. Not the land, not justice. You." Clara stared at him. The room held its breath. "That's the problem," she said finally. "You made this about me instead of about what was right. And now we've both lost." She walked out. Jacob followed, throwing Rowan an apologetic look that didn't help. Tom cleared his throat awkwardly. "Well, that was—" "Don't," Rowan said. "Just don't." He left them planning impossible rescues and headed outside into the gray afternoon. The sky looked like it might rain. Appropriate. Everything else had fallen apart. Why not the weather too? He found Archer in what was left of the stable, untouched by the fire through luck, or perhaps the attacker's minimal decency. The horse nickered softly, bumping his shoulder. "Yeah," Rowan muttered. "I know. I'm an idiot. He should leave." Clara was right about that. Go back to England, back to his mother's disappointed ghost and the empty promises he'd made at her deathbed. Find some suitable wife who wanted his title. Live the life he was supposed to live. Instead, he found himself walking toward the tree line where Clara had disappeared during the attack. Following her path through underbrush and fallen branches until he reached a clearing he hadn't known existed. Clara sat on a fallen log, staring at nothing. She didn't acknowledge his approach. Rowan sat down a few feet away, leaving space between them. "I really am sorry." "I know. I thought I could fix it, thought being a duke meant something out here. It doesn't mean anything anywhere. Titles are just words people use to feel important." Clara picked at the bark on the log. "My father used to say that out here, the only thing that matters is what you can do with your hands. Everything else is just talk." Smart man. He was. Smart enough to know when he was outmatched, not smart enough to stop fighting anyway. She glanced at Rowan. "Like you." "I'm not smart at all." "I proved that." "You're smart enough to know you failed. That's something." Clara's expression softened slightly. "Most men would have blamed me. Said I didn't fight hard enough, didn't hold on long enough. You fought harder than anyone I've ever met, including myself." They sat in silence for a while. Birds called in the distance. The wind picked up, bringing the smell of rain closer. "What are you going to do?" Rowan asked finally. "I don't know. Jacob offered me work at the tavern, serving drinks to the same people who watched my home burn and did nothing. That's not fair. They tried. They tried when it was safe. When you convinced them there might be a chance. But the second things got dangerous, they disappeared, all except you." Clara looked at him properly for the first time since the barn. "Why did you stay?" "Really? Don't give me lines about promises or doing what's right. Why did a duke from England give up everything for a farmer he barely knows?" Rowan considered lying, considered giving some noble answer about justice and duty. But Clara deserved truth, even if it made him look pathetic. "Because for 2 years I've been searching for something real, something that mattered, and I found it in you." He met her eyes. "You're the first person I've met in years who didn't want something from me, who didn't care about my title or my money. You just wanted help, and I wanted to be someone who could give it." "But you couldn't." "No, I couldn't." The admission hurt like glass in his throat. "I was arrogant enough to think I could ride in and fix everything. That wealth and connections made me some kind of savior, but all I did was make Hale move faster." Clara was quiet for a long moment, then, "You know what the worst part is? I started believing you. Started thinking maybe someone actually cared enough to fight for me. Not for my land or some principle. For me." She laughed without humor. "Guess we were both fools. I do care." "I know, that's what makes it worse." The first raindrops started falling, cold and heavy, the kind that promised a real storm. Clara stood, started back toward the farm. Rowan followed, both of them getting soaked before they reached the house. Inside, the planning session had devolved into arguments. Tom wanted to raid Hale's office. Someone else suggested burning it down. A third voice called for gathering everyone in the valley and marching on the sheriff's office. None of that works, Eli cut through the noise. We try any of it. We'll be arrested or killed. Hale's waiting for us to do something stupid so he can crush us legally. So what do you suggest? Bake him a cake and apologize? I suggest we think instead of react. Use our heads instead of our pride. Easy for you to say. You didn't lose anything. The accusation hung in the air. Eli's face went hard. I lost the same farm you're all pretending to care about. Lost my father. Lost any future I might have had here. So don't tell me I haven't lost anything. Before the argument could escalate, hoofbeats sounded outside. Everyone froze. Rowan moved to the window. A single rider approached through the rain, too small to be one of Hale's men, moving too carefully to be a threat. It was a boy, maybe 14, soaked to the bone, guiding a horse that looked ready to collapse. Tom opened the door. The boy practically fell inside, gasping for breath. Message, he managed. From the Capitol, for Duke Blackthorne. Rowan took the sealed envelope the boy offered, broke it open. Read words that made the room tilt sideways. What is it? Clara asked. Rowan looked up, his hands shaking slightly. Morrison filed charges against Hale, the county clerk, Sheriff Hayes, and 6 other officials. Warrants issued. Federal marshals are en route. The room erupted in shocked voices. When? How? Why now? Rowan scanned the letter again. Webb's article reached the territorial governor, created enough political pressure that Morrison couldn't ignore it, and my assault on Hale, he almost laughed. My assault convinced Morrison I was serious enough to stake my reputation on it, proved I believed the evidence was real. So hitting Hale actually helped? Tom sounded amazed. Apparently, Rowan looked at Clara. There's more. The deed transfer is being challenged. Morrison's office is claiming it was obtained through intimidation and fraud. They're freezing all Hale's property acquisitions pending investigation. Clara's face showed nothing, like she didn't trust the words, like hope had hurt her too many times already. Does that mean, Eli started. It means maybe we didn't lose, Rowan said. Maybe we actually won. The words felt strange in his mouth. Foreign. After days of failure, victory didn't fit right. But the letter was real. The charges were real. And somewhere in the Capitol, Vernon Hale was learning that money and corruption couldn't buy everything, not when people refused to stop fighting. Clara moved to the window, staring out at the rain and ruins. How long until the marshals arrive? 3 days? Maybe 4 if the weather slows them. And Hale knows about this? Probably. Morrison would have sent notification of the charges. Then we have 3 days before he runs or destroys evidence or kills everyone who testified against him. Clara turned, and Rowan saw something familiar returning to her eyes, that fierce, unbreakable strength he'd first noticed. 3 days to make sure he can't escape. What are you thinking? Tom asked. I'm thinking we don't wait for marshals. We don't give Hale time to cover his tracks. Clara moved to the map still spread on the table. His office is here. His records are there. Everything Morrison needs to make charges stick. You want to break in, Rowan said. Not a question. I want to secure evidence before it disappears. There's a difference. Legally, there isn't. Then it's good we've got a duke to make things legal. Clara looked at him. You still have that letter? The one giving you authority to investigate? Rowan did. A formal document from Morrison's office, created after their meeting, authorizing Duke Blackthorne to gather additional evidence. He'd forgotten about it in the chaos. We use that, Clara continued. Walk in the front door. Demand access to records. If Hale refuses, he's obstructing a legal investigation. If he complies, we get what we need. He'll have guards, armed men. So we bring armed men of our own, not to fight, to witness, make it all public and official. Clara's voice grew stronger. We do this right. No more mistakes. No more losing. The room fell silent. Rowan studied the map, calculating odds. It was dangerous, possibly illegal despite the letter. Hale would fight it, but Clara was right. If they waited, evidence would vanish and Hale would walk. All right, he said finally, but we do it smart. No violence unless absolutely necessary. We're not giving Hale or Hayes any excuse to claim we're the criminals. Agreed, Clara said.
Tom grinned. So when do we ride?
Tomorrow morning, early, before Hale knows what's happening. Rowan looked around the room at faces showing determination, fear, hope. Everyone who comes needs to understand the risks. This could end badly. Everything ends badly eventually, someone muttered. Might as well go down fighting. They spent the rest of the evening planning. Routes, timing, who would enter the building, who would stand witness outside. The boy who'd brought the message agreed to ride back to the capital, tell Morrison what they were doing, ask for any legal cover he could provide. As night fell, people dispersed to prepare. Clara stayed at the table, studying the map like it held secrets. Rowan sat across from her. You sure about this? No. But I'm tired of being scared, tired of running. If we're going to lose, I want it to be because we fought as hard as we could, not because we gave up. We might actually win. Maybe. She looked up. Would that change anything between us? The question caught Rowan off guard. What do you mean? I mean you're still a duke. I'm still a farmer. Even if we get the land back, even if Hale goes to prison, you don't belong here. You never did.
I don't belong in England either. Not anymore. Then where do you belong? Rowan thought about ballrooms and estates, and the empty life waiting for him back home. Then he thought about this broken farm, and the impossible woman sitting across from him, and the way fighting beside her felt more real than anything he'd experienced in years. Here, he said. I belong here. Claire's expression softened. You're going to regret that. Probably. But it'll be my regret. My choice. He reached across the table, found her hand. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad I stayed. Glad I met you. Even if it all goes wrong. It's already gone wrong. We're just trying to fix it. But she didn't pull her hand away. If we survive tomorrow, if we actually beat Hale, what then? Then we rebuild. Your farm, your life, whatever you want. And you'll help? A duke doing farm work? I've gotten pretty good at splitting wood. Clara almost smiled. Almost. You're insane. You've mentioned that before. They sat there in the lamplight while rain hammered the roof, and somewhere in the distance, Vernon Hale was probably planning how to crush them one final time. But for this moment, in this broken house, Rowan felt something close to peace. Tomorrow they'd fight. Maybe win. Maybe lose. But tonight, just for a few hours, they could pretend the war was already over and they'd made it through. Clara stood eventually, exhausted and still hurting from the attack. Get some rest. We'll need it. Clara, she paused. Thank you for giving this one more chance. Don't thank me yet. Thank me if we're still alive tomorrow night. She disappeared upstairs. Rowan heard her door close, heard floorboards creak as she moved around the room. He sat at the table a while longer, staring at the map and Morrison's letter and the impossible task ahead. Eli came in from checking the perimeter. Everyone's bedded down. Tom's taking first watch. Good. You really think this will work? Honestly, I have no idea, but it's better than waiting for Hale to destroy evidence and disappear. Eli nodded. My father would have liked you. He always respected people who showed up even when things looked hopeless. Your father sounds like he was a good man. He was. Stubborn as hell, but good. Eli moved toward the stairs. Don't stay up too late. Tomorrow's going to be rough. Alone in the kitchen, Rowan reviewed their plan one more time, looking for holes, for mistakes, for anything that could go catastrophically wrong. He found plenty, but he also found something else. A slim chance. A narrow path between disaster and victory. If they moved fast enough, if Hale didn't expect them, if everything went exactly right for once. A lot of ifs. Outside, the storm intensified. Thunder rolled across the valley. Lightning lit the windows in brief, stark flashes. Rowan thought about his mother, about the promise he'd made. Find someone real, find something worth fighting for. He'd found both. Now he just had to survive long enough to keep them. He climbed the stairs, past Clara's room where lamplight showed under the door, heard her moving around, probably unable to sleep despite the exhaustion. His own room, bare except for a bedroll and the few possessions he'd carried from England, felt temporary, like he was still just passing through. Maybe he was. Maybe after tomorrow he'd be arrested or killed or forced to flee, Or maybe, just maybe, he'd finally found a place to stop running. Rowan lay down without undressing, listening to rain and thunder and the old house settling around him. His last thought before sleep took him was Clara's voice asking where he belonged. Here, he thought again, against all logic and probability. Here! The storm raged through the night. By morning it had passed, leaving the valley washed clean and bright. Rowan woke to sunlight streaming through the window and voices downstairs. He descended to find the kitchen full of people, not just Tom and Eli and the men from yesterday. Dozens more, farmers, workers, families who'd lost land to hail. Even Jacob was there, looking uncomfortable but determined. Word spread, Tom explained. Seems like everyone wants to see this through. Clara stood by the window, counting heads. When she saw Rowan, she nodded. 43 people, more than I expected. More witnesses, Rowan said. Makes it harder for Hale to claim anything improper happened. Or gives him more targets. But Clara was smiling slightly. Either way, we're committed now. They rode out an hour later. 43 riders moving through the valley like an army, though armies usually had better weapons and more formal training. This was just desperate people making a last stand. The town appeared ahead, small and quiet in the morning light. A few early risers stopped to watch the procession pass. Word would reach Hale within minutes, but they'd planned for that. Hale's office occupied a 2-story building on the main street. Brick construction, expensive glass windows, a sign proclaiming Hale Enterprises in gold letters. Guards stood outside, 4 of them, armed with rifles. The rider stopped in the street. Rowan dismounted, Clara beside him, Morrison's letter in his hand. One of the guards stepped forward. Office is closed. Tell Mr. Hale that Duke Rowan Blackthorne is here on official business. He can let us in voluntarily or explain to federal marshals why he obstructed a legal investigation. The guard hesitated, looked at the 40-plus people watching, looked at Rowan's formal letter bearing official seals. Wait here. He disappeared inside. Minutes passed. The crowd grew as townspeople emerged to see what was happening. Rowan spotted the county clerk across the street, looking pale. Sheriff Hayes appeared from his office, hand on his pistol but not drawing. The guard returned. Mr. Hale will see you. You and the woman only. Everyone else stays outside. Agreed. Rowan glanced at Tom. Keep everyone calm, no matter what happens. Tom nodded grimly. Rowan and Clara walked toward the door. The guards parted, and together they stepped into Vernon Hale's domain, knowing that whatever happened next would determine everything. Hale's office smelled like expensive tobacco and older money. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture, oil paintings of landscapes Hale probably didn't own yet, but planned to. Everything calculated to intimidate. Vernon Hale sat behind a desk the size of Clara's kitchen table, looking calm despite the mob outside his window. He didn't stand when they entered, didn't offer chairs, just studied them like specimens he was considering mounting. Duke Blackthorne, Miss Whitmore. His voice carried the same smooth confidence it always did. This is quite theatrical. 40 people for a business meeting? This isn't a meeting, Rowan said, placing Morrison's letter on the desk. This is a legal seizure of evidence pursuant to criminal charges filed by the Territorial Attorney General. You're required to provide access to all records related to land acquisitions in the Northern Valley for the past 3 years. Hale glanced at the letter without touching it. I see Morrison finally grew a spine. Pity it won't help him. He leaned back in his chair. You realize this letter means nothing? By the time any marshals arrive, every document in this building will be gone, burned, buried, fed to pigs, your choice. Then you'll be destroying evidence, another charge. Prove it. You think those farmers outside will testify? They'll disappear like morning dew the second I apply pressure. You've seen how that works. Clara moved closer to the desk. You can't threaten everyone forever. Can I? Hale's smile widened. I've been doing it successfully for 2 years. Longer, if we're being honest. People are predictable, Miss Whitmore. They cave. They always cave. You did. Under duress, the deed transfer won't hold. It'll hold long enough. By the time it's challenged properly, I'll have extracted the silver, sold the claims, and moved my operation somewhere your Duke's influence doesn't reach. Hale finally stood, moving to a cabinet. He poured himself whiskey like they were discussing weather. You want to know the truth? You've already lost. This performance changes nothing.
Rowan's hand moved toward his pistol, but Clara caught his arm. She was right. Violence would only prove Hale's point. Open the records, Rowan said instead, or I'll have my people break down every door in this building until we find them. That would be illegal entry. I'd be within my rights to have you shot. Hale sipped his whiskey. But I'm curious how far you'll actually go. So let's make this interesting. He moved to a safe built into the wall, spun the combination with casual ease, and pulled out a stack of ledgers, dropped them on the desk with a heavy thud. There, my records. Every transaction, every payment, every forged signature and bribed official, all documented. Take them, give them to Morrison, see what happens. Rowan stared at the ledgers. This was too easy. Why? Because it doesn't matter. Hale drained his whiskey. You think I kept the only copies here? You think I'm stupid enough to leave myself vulnerable? I have duplicates in 3 locations, with instructions to release them publicly if anything happens to me. Those duplicates tell a very different story. One where you and Miss Whitmore are the criminals, forging evidence to steal my legitimately acquired property. No one will believe that, won't they? You're a foreign duke who assaulted me in public. She's a desperate farmer who signed over her land legally. I'm a respected businessman with decades of community investment. Hale's smile turned cruel. Who do you think the average person believes? Clara's jaw tightened. People know what you are. People know what I let them see. And what I let them see is a successful entrepreneur who's transformed this valley from worthless scrubland into valuable commercial territory. The families I displaced? Tragic, but necessary for progress. Your father? An unfortunate accident. You? A stubborn woman who refused a generous offer. My father was murdered. Prove it. Oh, wait, you can't. Because the only witness is dead and the only evidence is speculation. Hale moved back to his desk. You want these ledgers? Take them. But understand that the moment you do, I activate my insurance policy. By sunset, every newspaper in the territory will have a story about how Duke Blackthorne and his accomplice attempted to frame me for crimes they committed themselves. Your reputation will be destroyed. His family's name will be mud. And I'll still have my silver Ichoshishen. The room fell silent except for distant voices from the street. Rowan looked at the ledgers, at Hale's confident face, at Clara's barely controlled rage. This was the trap. Take the evidence and be destroyed by Hale's counter-narrative. Leave it and have nothing to give the marshals when they arrived. There's a third option, Clara said quietly. Both men looked at her. She moved to the window, gestured outside. All those people out there? They're not just witnesses. They're victims. Every family you destroyed, every person you threatened, every life you ruined for profit. Her voice grew stronger. You can control what newspapers print. You can bribe officials and buy judges. But you can't silence 40 people all telling the same truth at the same time. Hale's expression flickered. Just for a moment, but Rowan caught it. Uncertainty. Public testimony means nothing without evidence, Hale said. It means everything when it's this many people. Clara turned from the window. You built your empire on fear and silence, on isolated families too scared to stand together. But we're not isolated anymore. We're not silent. And when the marshals arrive, every single person outside will tell them exactly what you did. Hearsay. Inadmissible. Maybe legally, but politically. Clara smiled without warmth. Morrison's already facing pressure from the governor. Webb's articles have the whole territory watching. 40 testimonies from victims, all corroborating each other, all pointing to you. Even your bought judges will have trouble dismissing that. Hale's calm mask was cracking. You're bluffing. Am I? Let's find out. Clara moved toward the door. We'll take your ledgers, give them to Morrison, let you release your counter-story, and then we'll see whose version the public believes. A railroad baron protecting his interests, or 40 families who lost everything. They won't testify. I'll destroy anyone who tries. You can't destroy everyone. That's your problem. You've gotten so used to crushing individuals that you forgot what happens when they stop being individuals and become a group. Clara opened the door. Thank you for the ledgers, Mr. Hale. They'll be very useful. Rowan grabbed the stack, heavy and damning in his hands. Hale stood frozen behind his desk, his carefully constructed confidence finally failing. This isn't over, Hale said. You're right, Clara replied.
It's not over until you're in prison or dead. Everything until then is just waiting. They walked out. The crowd outside had grown. Rowan counted at least 60 people now, more arriving every minute. Word had spread through the valley like wildfire. Families who'd been too scared to fight alone were finding courage in numbers. Tom pushed through to meet them. Well, we got the records. Rowan held up the ledgers. And Hale knows he's lost. A cheer went up from the crowd. Not triumphant exactly, more like pressure releasing after being held too long. People laughed and cried and embraced each other with the desperate relief of prisoners seeing sunlight after years in darkness. Eli appeared with horses. We should move. No telling what Hale might do now that we've backed him into a corner. But before they could mount up, Sheriff Hayes stepped into the street, 6 deputies behind him, all armed. That's far enough, Hayes called out. His hand rested on his pistol, but Rowan noticed it was shaking. Duke Blackthorne, you're under arrest for theft and inciting a riot. The crowd went silent. Rowan handed the ledgers to Clara, then stepped forward. On what evidence, Sheriff? Mr. Hale has filed a complaint stating you forcibly entered his property and stole confidential business records. We had legal authorization. Rowan pulled out Morrison's letter again. From the Attorney General's office. This is a legitimate investigation. That letter authorizes you to request access, not to seize property. Hayes sounded like he was reciting words someone else had written. You'll need to come with me. And if I refuse? Then I'll take you by force. The crowd shifted, angry murmurs, hands moving toward weapons. Tom and Eli moved to flank Rowan, their intentions clear. This was how it would end, Rowan realized. Not with legal victory or moral triumph, but with violence in a muddy street. People would die. Maybe him. Maybe Clara. Definitely some of the farmers who'd only wanted their land back. Hale would win after all, not through courts or bribes, but through chaos. Wait. Clara stepped between Rowan and Hayes. Sheriff, you want to arrest someone? Arrest me instead. Clara, no. Rowan started. I'm the property owner, the victim in Hale's fraud. If anyone has the right to seize his records, it's me. She met Hayes' eyes. So arrest me. Take me in. We'll sort it out when the marshals arrive. Hayes looked uncomfortable. Miss Whitmore, that's not... What? Not what you wanted? You wanted the Duke because Hale told you to get the Duke. But legally, I have more standing than he does. Clara's voice carried across the street. So either arrest me for recovering evidence of crimes committed against me, or admit you're just following Hale's orders regardless of law. The sheriff's face went red. His deputies looked equally uncertain. The crowd pressed closer, not threatening exactly, but making it clear whose side they were on. Before Hayes could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. Nobody's getting arrested today. Everyone turned. Martin Webb stood at the edge of the crowd, notebook in hand, a photographer beside him with a camera mounted on a tripod. At least not without it being documented for tomorrow's front page. So please, Sheriff Hayes, tell me, are you arresting citizens for cooperating with an official investigation? I want to make sure I quote you accurately. Hayes' hand dropped from his pistol. This is official police business. This is corruption, and we both know it. Webb gestured to his photographer. But if you want to arrest people anyway, go ahead. We'll photograph the whole thing. Show the territory exactly how justice works in Hale's pocket. The photographer raised his camera. Flash powder ready. Hayes looked at his deputies, at the crowd, at Webb's camera pointed like a weapon. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Hayes stepped back. This isn't finished. You're right about that, Webb said. It's not finished until everyone involved in Hale's operation is answering to federal charges. But that's coming. 3 days, maybe less. Hayes and his deputies retreated. The crowd released a collective breath. Webb approached Rowan and Clara, grinning. Thought you might need backup. How did you know to come? Rowan asked. The boy you sent to Morrison stopped by my office first. Told me what you were planning. Figured it might make a good story. Webb glanced at the ledgers Clara held. Speaking of which, those look interesting. They're Hale's records. Everything Morrison needs. Mind if I take a look? Off the record, just to confirm what we're dealing with? Clara handed them over. Webb flipped through pages, his expression growing darker with each entry. This is worse than I thought. He's been running this scheme for 4 years, not 2. Dozens of properties, hundreds of thousands in fraud. Can you print it? Clara asked. I can print excerpts. Enough to show the public what he's done without compromising Morrison's investigation. Webb looked up. But you understand what happens next. Hale won't go quietly. He'll fight, use every resource he has. Let him fight, Clara said. We're not backing down. Webb nodded slowly. Then I'll make sure people know the truth, all of it, no matter who it upsets.
They spent the rest of the day at Webb's office documenting everything: names, dates, forgeries, bribes. Webb's photographer took pictures of key pages. Two of Webb's assistants copied transactions by hand, creating redundant records in case Hale tried to destroy the originals. By evening, they had enough material for a week's worth of front pages. This goes to print tonight, Webb said. Tomorrow morning, everyone in the territory will know exactly what Vernon Hale is.
He'll sue you, Rowan warned. Let him. I've been sued before. Never by someone this guilty, though. Webb grinned. This is going to be fun. They left the newspaper office as the sun was setting, carrying copies of everything Webb had documented. The crowd that had gathered at Hale's office had dispersed, but people still watched from windows and doorways. The whole town felt like it was holding its breath, waiting to see what happened next. Clara stopped in the middle of the street, looking around at the buildings and people in the valley beyond. It's not over, she said quietly. Even with the ledgers, even with Webb's articles, Hale's still out there, still dangerous. The marshals will be here soon, Rowan said. And if they're not, if Hale runs before they arrive, or if he has friends in places we don't know about. Clara turned to him. We can't count on the system to save us. We learned that already. Then what do you suggest? We don't wait for rescue. We finish this ourselves. That night, back at what remained of Clara's farm, they made plans. Not to attack Hale directly. That was suicide. But to cut off his escape routes, freeze his assets, make it impossible for him to run or hide. Tom knew a telegraph operator who owed him favors. Messages went out to banks in every major city, warning them about Hale's impending arrest and freezing his accounts pending investigation. Eli contacted friends in the railroad company who weren't on Hale's payroll, convincing them to deny him transport or passage. Jacob spread word through the valley that anyone helping Hale escape would be considered complicit. They built a cage around him, not made of bars, but of blocked roads and frozen money, and a community that had finally stopped being afraid. The morning Webb's article hit the streets. Rowan stood on Clara's porch watching smoke rise from the town. Not from fire. From people burning papers and cutting ties, trying to distance themselves from Hale's collapsing empire. The county clerk resigned. 2 judges quietly left town. Sheriff Hayes barricaded himself in his office, refusing to answer questions. The cage was tightening. Clara emerged from the house, wearing fresh clothes someone had donated. Her face still showed bruises from the attack, but her eyes were clear, determined. Webb's office just sent word, she said. Hale tried to board a train this morning. The railroad refused him passage. Where is he now? Holed up in his office with a dozen guards. Says he's not leaving until the marshals arrive and he can clear his name through proper legal channels. Rowan almost laughed. He actually thinks he can fight this in court? He's desperate. Desperate men do stupid things. Clara sat on the porch steps. The marshals should be here by tomorrow. Morrison sent another message confirming their route. Then we just have to keep Hale contained for 24 hours. Easier said than done. He's still got men, money, weapons. If he decides to make a run for it, a gunshot echoed from town. Then another. Then a dozen more in rapid succession. Rowan and Clara were running before the echoes faded, grabbing horses, shouting for Eli and Tom. They rode hard toward the sound, hearts pounding, expecting the worst. The scene they found was chaos. Hale's office building had its windows shot out, guards firing into the street from behind barricades. Across from them, townspeople had taken cover behind wagons and barrels, returning fire. What the hell happened? Rowan demanded, sliding off Archer. A shopkeeper crouched nearby answered. Hale tried to make a run for it. Someone spotted him loading a wagon with papers and gold. Tried to stop him. His men started shooting. Another volley of gunfire. Someone screamed. This was it, Rowan realized, the moment everything fell apart. People were going to die over a plot of land and some silver deposits,
All their careful planning, all their legal maneuvering, gone in an instant because Hale would rather kill than surrender. "We need to stop this," Clara said, "before someone dies." "How?" "We go out there. We get shot." "Then we don't go out there. We go in." Clara pointed to the alley beside Hale's building. "There's a back entrance, loading dock. If we can get inside, that's suicide. So is letting this turn into a massacre?" Clara was already moving. "Come on!" Rowan grabbed Tom and Eli, and together they circled around while the gunfight continued. The back entrance was unguarded. Hale's men were all focused on the street. They slipped inside. The building's interior was dark, smoky from something burning upstairs. Rowan heard voices shouting, boots on floorboards, the sound of papers being shuffled frantically. They climbed the back stairs carefully, reached the second floor, found Hale in his office, surrounded by guards, feeding documents into a small stove that was belching smoke. "Stop!" Rowan stepped into the doorway, pistol raised. Every guard spun toward him. 6 weapons pointed at his chest. Clara, Tom, and Eli fanned out behind him, equally armed. Hale looked up from the stove, his face smudged with ash and desperation. "You're too late! Everything's burning!" "Not everything. We have copies. Webb has copies. Morrison has the originals." Rowan kept his voice steady despite his racing heart. "It's over, Hale. The marshals are coming. Your empire is finished. You can surrender or die. Choose." "Die?" Hale laughed high and cracked. "I built this territory. I brought civilization to wilderness. I created value where there was nothing. And you want me to surrender to farmers and foreign nobles who don't understand progress? I understand corruption when I see it. Corruption is just business by another name. Everyone takes shortcuts. I just took them more efficiently." Hale grabbed another stack of papers, fed them to the flames. "You think destroying me changes anything? Someone else will do exactly what I did. Someone always does. That's how the world works." "Maybe," Clara said, "but they'll have to answer for it too, because we're not stopping. Not with you. Not with anyone who comes after you." Hale stared at her. "You actually believe that? That justice matters? That fighting back changes anything?" "I believe my father died trying to stop you. I believe 40 families lost everything because you decided their lives were worth less than your profit." Claire's voice didn't waver. "And I believe that if we don't fight people like you, then everything he died for was meaningless. Your father was a fool. Maybe. But he was a fool who stood up. That's more than most people can say." Outside, the gunfire had stopped. Voices shouted for Hale to surrender. Someone was calling for water to fight the fire spreading from the stove. Hale looked around his office, at the burning papers, at the guards who were starting to lower their weapons, at the empire crumbling in real time. "You want me to surrender? Fine. But it won't bring back your father, won't rebuild your farm, won't change the fact that I owned this valley for 2 years and did whatever I wanted." "You're right," Clara said. "Nothing changes that. But what happens next? That's on us. And we're going to make sure everyone who comes after you knows there's a price for treating people like they're disposable." Rowan watched something shift in Hale's expression. Not acceptance exactly, not even defeat, just exhaustion. The look of a man who'd fought as hard as he could and finally ran out of road. "All right," Hale said quietly. "I surrender." The marshals arrived the next morning to find Vernon Hale already in custody, guarded by half the valley. Sheriff Hayes and the county clerk were arrested within hours. The investigation expanded to include judges, railroad executives, and mining company officials. Within a week, 23 people had been charged with crimes ranging from fraud to murder. The trial took 3 months. Rowan testified. Clara testified. 40 families told their stories to a courtroom packed with journalists from across the territory. Webb's newspaper ran daily coverage, ensuring the whole country watched. Hale was convicted on 17 counts and sentenced to 20 years. The other conspirators received similar terms. Clara's deed transfer was voided. Every fraudulent land acquisition was reversed. The valley began to heal. It wasn't quick. It wasn't easy. Families had to rebuild homes, replant fields, recreate lives that had been shattered. Clara's farm took 6 months to restore, working dawn to dusk with help from neighbors who remembered what her father had tried to do. Rowan stayed through all of it. Not as a duke playing at farm life, but as someone who'd found a place that mattered. He learned to mend fences, rotate crops, read weather signs in the clouds. His hands developed calluses. His back learned what real work felt like. He wrote to his family's estate manager, arranging for funds to be sent to the valley. Not charity, investments. In new equipment, better roads, a school, things that would help people rebuild not just their farms, but their futures. Some people questioned it. A duke living like a commoner, married to a farmer, working land instead of managing estates. The London papers had a field day. Society pages mocked him. Old friends sent concerned letters. Rowan burned the letters and kept working, because somewhere in the process of fighting for Clara's farm, he'd learned something his mother had been trying to teach him all along. Titles didn't make you important. Money didn't make you valuable. What mattered was showing up, choosing a side, standing firm when everything tried to break you. The wedding happened in spring, a year after the trial ended. Not in a church or fancy hall, but in Clara's fields with the whole valley attending. No aristocrats, no formal ceremonies, just people who'd fought together, celebrating something that felt like victory. Standing beside Clara as sunset painted the mountains gold, Rowan thought about the journey that had brought him here, the ballrooms he'd fled, the promise he'd made, the woman he'd found who wanted nothing from him except honesty and partnership. "You ever regret it?" Clara asked quietly, following his gaze across the valley. "Giving up your old life for this?" Rowan looked at her, this impossible woman who'd refused to break even when everything tried to crush her, and smiled. "Every day." Clara's eyes widened slightly. "I regret wasting 2 years searching for this when I should have looked sooner. I regret the time I spent pretending titles mattered. I regret not meeting you earlier." He took her hand. "But choosing this life, staying here, that's the one thing I've never regretted for a second. Even when you're shoveling manure? Especially then, at least manure is honest about what it is." Clara laughed, and the sound carried across fields that had almost been stolen, but were now finally, truly theirs. Around them, people danced and sang and celebrated not just a wedding, but a victory that had cost them everything and given them back something more valuable. Community, resilience, the knowledge that when they stood together, even empires could fall. Tom raised a glass in toast. To the Duke who became a farmer and the farmer who became a legend. The crowd cheered. Jacob added his own toast. And to everyone who learned that fighting back might cost everything, but giving up costs more. More cheers. More toasts. More laughter echoing through the valley that had nearly been lost. Later, as the celebration wound down and people headed home, Rowan stood with Clara on the porch of her rebuilt farmhouse. Their farmhouse now. The place they'd defended and lost and won back through sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. "What do we do now?" Clara asked. "We live. We work. We make sure this valley never forgets what happens when good people stop being afraid." "That's a lot of responsibility." "Yeah, but we've gotten pretty good at handling impossible things." Clara leaned against him, and they watched stars appear over mountains that had witnessed corruption and courage in equal measure. Somewhere out there, in courtrooms and newspapers and dinner table conversations, their story was being told. Probably getting exaggerated, definitely getting mythologized. But the truth underneath all the stories was simple. People with nothing had stood against someone with everything. And through a combination of stubbornness, luck, and refusing to be silent, they'd won. Not cleanly, not perfectly, but they'd won. And that was enough. Years later, when Rowan was old and gray and his hands were too stiff to work like they used to, people would ask him about those days, about fighting hail, about abandoning his title for farm life, about whether it had been worth it. He'd smile and point to the valley, thriving now, with schools and roads and families who owned their futures. He'd talk about Clara, still fierce even with silver in her hair, about their children who'd grown up knowing their parents had stood for something real. And he'd tell them the lesson he'd learned in that forgotten frontier town, the one his mother had tried to teach him in a London ballroom years earlier. Strength isn't found in power or wealth or titles that other people give you. Real strength comes from choosing to stand beside someone when the whole world is trying to break them. From fighting for what's right, even when you know you might lose. From showing up again and again, even when fear says run. That's what made someone worthy. Not their bloodline, not their fortune, just their willingness to plant their feet and refuse to move when it mattered most. The valley understood that now. understood that empires built on fear and corruption could fall, that ordinary people standing together were stronger than any amount of money or influence, that sometimes the only thing separating victory from defeat was the simple, stubborn choice to keep fighting one more day. Vernon Hale had understood power, but he'd never understood people, never grasped that you could crush individuals, but communities were different, harder to break, impossible to silence completely. That had been his mistake, and it had cost him everything. As for Rowan, he'd found what he'd been searching for, not in ballrooms or estates or any of the places society said mattered, but in a broken-down farm and a woman who'd taught him that real nobility had nothing to do with titles. It had everything to do with showing up when it counted, and he'd kept showing up every day for the rest of his life. That was legacy enough.
I just heard him. I think Chandler scared him
I can
off.
see his eyes. What the fuck is that?
It's a bracken.
Look behind you, bro.
Don't look at it for too long. Always this. Always this.
I got him!
Oh my god.
I killed the bracken! One of us needs to get out of here alive. I'll take Ben. If I can remember how to get out of here. Oh wait, it's to the left of this door. Yes, and that was up, right? This way? No. I fucking killed the bracken, dude.
This way.
Yeah, it was this way. Hi, Chandler. Why are you hitting the wall for?
I forgot that I can talk to you guys. I was trying to tell y'all this way.
Where the fuck is the way out?
I believe you're going the right way.
This is an exit, I think, right? No, wait, this is a dead end. I think I know generally where we are now because of this room, though. It's this way and then back this way. I think. And this way, through the stair. Yep. Okay, cool. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Rip Ben.